When Dodge introduced the Omni in 1978, few could have imagined that this unassuming little hatchback would one day become the foundation for one of America's earliest production electric vehicles. At the time, the automotive world was focused on fuel efficiency and practicality in the wake of the 1970s oil crisis. Chrysler, still recovering from financial turbulence, was desperate for an economical, compact, and modern car that could compete with imports from Japan and Europe. The result was the Dodge Omni, a small, front-wheel drive subcompact inspired by the European Talbot Horizon. It was boxy, efficient, and practical, designed more out of necessity than inspiration. Yet, somehow, it became a pivotal chapter in the evolution of American automotive design. The Omni was Chrysler's first front-wheel drive car, a significant departure for a company that had built its legacy on big V8 sedans and rear-wheel drive muscle cars. When it arrived in 1978, it represented the company's attempt to modernize and survive. The timing was perfect. Gasoline prices were volatile, environmental regulations were tightening, and American buyers were beginning to appreciate compact, efficient vehicles. The Omni's front-drive layout offered better traction and packaging efficiency, while its simple yet robust design made it accessible and easy to maintain. In 1979, Chrysler took the concept a step further with the introduction of the Dodge Omni 024, a sportier three-door coupe variant that aimed to attract younger buyers. With its sloping roofline, compact proportions, and pseudo-performance cues, the Omni 024 was intended to compete with the Volkswagen Scirocco and the hatchback version of the Honda Accord. It was a modest attempt at injecting style and sportiness into the practical Omni platform. Under the hood, buyers could choose between a Volkswagen-sourced 1.7-liter four-cylinder engine producing 70 horsepower or Chrysler's own 2.2-liter K-Code engine rated at 84 horsepower. The 024 never achieved the commercial success of its five-door sibling. Between 1979 and 1982, Dodge sold 160,729 units, respectable but short of expectations. Plymouth offered a nearly identical version called the TC3, which managed to sell around 208,000 examples before both were phased out. In 1983, Dodge revived the Charger nameplate, rebranding the 024 as the Dodge Charger 2.2. Yet, before that transformation, the original Omni 024 quietly became the basis for one of the most unusual and visionary vehicles of its era, the Jet Industries Electrica 007. Jet Industries, founded in 1977 in Austin, Texas, was not a traditional automaker, but rather an ambitious conversion company. Its goal was to develop a practical lineup of electric vehicles using existing production platforms. At the time, interest in electric propulsion was rekindled by the energy crises of the 1970s, but battery and motor technology lagged far behind ambition. Most automakers were focused on refining internal combustion engines rather than exploring electric power. Jet Industries, however, saw an opportunity. It began converting small vans, trucks, and compact cars into fully electric vehicles, products that could, at least on paper, offer consumers independence from gasoline. Among their creations were the Electrovan 600, based on the Subaru Somber, the Electrovan 750, built from the Mazda B2000 pickup, the Ford Escort-based Electrica, and the most intriguing of all, the Dodge Omni 024, based Electrica 007. The name itself was audacious, an obvious wink to the James Bond films, but behind it was a sincere attempt to demonstrate that electric cars could be fun, futuristic, and functional. Externally, the Electrica 007 looked nearly identical to the standard Omni 024. The clean lines, the slightly raked rear hatch, and the compact proportions remained. What changed was beneath the surface. The gasoline engine and fuel system were removed, replaced by a 23-horsepower DC electric motor and a large bank of lead-acid batteries housed in the trunk. 15 6-volt batteries provided the energy, feeding the motor through a basic controller system that governed acceleration and range. Jet Industries claimed the 007 could achieve a top speed of 70 miles per hour, 113 kilometers per hour, and a range of around 50 miles, 80 kilometers, on a single charge. In practice, performance was modest. Acceleration was leisurely, and the car's additional weight from the batteries made handling somewhat heavier than the gasoline version. But for the late 1970s and early 1980s, it was nothing short of revolutionary. Here was an American-made electric vehicle capable of driving on highways, using no fuel, and emitting no tailpipe pollution, decades before Tesla or Nissan Leaf were even concepts. The Electrica 007 wasn't just a technical curiosity. It was a symbol of imagination during a period when most people dismissed electric propulsion as impractical fantasy. The car's simple engineering relied on proven components and accessible materials, but it represented something far larger: the belief that the future of mobility could be cleaner and more sustainable. Unfortunately, the world wasn't ready. Battery technology at the time was primitive by modern standards. The lead-acid batteries were heavy, inefficient, and prone to degradation. Charging infrastructure was non-existent, meaning owners had to rely on domestic outlets for recharging, which could take many hours. Electric cars were also expensive to produce, especially in low volumes. Jet Industries sold their conversions primarily to municipalities, fleet operators, and environmentally conscious individuals, people willing to experiment, not mainstream buyers. Despite these challenges, Jet Industries reportedly managed to sell more than 1,500 conversions across all its models before shutting down in the early 1980s. Exact figures for the Electrica 007 are unknown, but estimates suggest that no more than 50 were ever built. Fewer still survive today, making it an ultra-rare relic of a transitional era in automotive history. The example that survives in the Larry Claremont Museum is particularly noteworthy. Finished in silver, it retains its original 23-horsepower DC motor under the hood, a testament to the durability of Jet's engineering. The interior remains in excellent condition, capturing the simplicity of 1980s American design. Vinyl seats, analog gauges, and an unpretentious dashboard. The trunk, once home to the 15 6-volt batteries, now sits empty, awaiting perhaps a modern retrofit with lightweight lithium-ion cells that could transform the car from a historical novelty into a usable electric classic. To stand before the Electrica 007 today is to peer into an alternate timeline, a glimpse of what might have been had electric vehicle technology advanced sooner. This presence is both charming and prophetic. In an age where Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid define the electric landscape, it's easy to forget that pioneers like Jet Industries laid the conceptual groundwork decades earlier. The Electrica 007, humble though it was, carried the same spirit of innovation and defiance that drives the EV revolution now. When viewed alongside other experimental vehicles from the same period, the City Car, the Sebring Vanguard, and GM's short-lived EV, one of the 1990s, the 007 occupies a unique space. It bridged the gap between homemade conversions and factory-backed prototypes. It showed that electric propulsion could be integrated into a mass-market chassis and sold, however briefly, to the public. That simple fact makes it historically significant. There's also a cultural resonance to its story. The late 1970s and early 1980s were an age of experimentation, marked by both economic uncertainty and technological optimism. The Electrica 007 embodied that duality. It was created in a time of crisis but driven by hope. It existed because a small company in Texas believed that the future of transportation could be reimagined, not by giant corporations or governments, but by engineers and dreamers with conviction. The irony is that the Electrica 007, despite its futuristic intentions, looked entirely ordinary. Its design carried none of the flamboyant cues associated with science fiction vehicles. That understatement makes it even more fascinating today. It wasn't trying to be a symbol of the future. It was trying to function as one. Its very normalcy was part of its genius. It allowed people to imagine electric propulsion not as a distant concept, but as something that could fit seamlessly into everyday life. Of course, Jet Industries' ambitions were curtailed by the realities of the market. The oil crisis waned, gasoline became cheaper, and consumer enthusiasm for electric cars faded as quickly as it had appeared. Without federal incentives or mass interest, Jet's conversions were financially unsustainable. By the early 1980s, the company had quietly disappeared, its efforts largely forgotten except by a handful of collectors and historians. Today, the surviving Electrica 007s are rare artifacts, valued not for performance but for what they represent. They are pieces of a story that connects the past to the present, a narrative of persistence, failure, and eventual vindication. The modern EV revolution owes part of its foundation to companies like Jet Industries, which proved that electric cars could be built, driven, and loved, even when the odds were against them. The example soon to cross the auction block at Meekum's Larry's Legacy 2025 sale offers a rare chance to own a tangible piece of that story. Sold at no reserve, it stands as both a collector's curiosity and a symbol of how far technology has come. The irony is palpable. In an era when electric vehicles are celebrated for their cutting-edge powertrains and advanced batteries, this humble Dodge-based coupe reminds us that innovation often begins quietly, without fanfare, in workshops far from Detroit's corporate boardrooms. To study the Electrica 007 is to appreciate the courage it took to challenge convention. Its builders worked with what they had: simple motors, heavy batteries, and modest budgets. But their vision extended far beyond the constraints of their time. They imagined a cleaner, smarter future. They failed commercially, yes, but their failure was noble and instructive. It showed that progress in the automotive world is not always linear. Sometimes it advances in fits and starts, led by those willing to take risks. As automotive historians continue to reevaluate the lineage of electric mobility, the Electrica 007 is gaining newfound recognition. It stands shoulder to shoulder with other early EV efforts that paved the way for what we drive today. Its modest 23 horsepower may seem laughable next to the 1,000 horsepower figures of modern electric supercars, but its significance is immeasurable. It is proof that the dream of zero-emission driving has deep roots in American ingenuity. In a sense, the Electrica 007 was ahead of its time, not because it performed brilliantly, but because it asked the right questions long before others dared to. What if cars didn't need gasoline? What if energy could be stored and reused? What if sustainability could coexist with practicality? Those questions, once considered naive, now define the future of transportation. More than 4 decades after it was built, the Electrica 007 remains a symbol of perseverance and vision. It carries the DNA of a revolution that took decades to mature. To see one today is to witness a glimpse of electric history frozen in steel and lead, a testament to the innovators who dared to imagine something different. And as the silver coupe from the Larry Claremont Museum prepares to meet its next owner, it serves as a reminder that every technological leap begins with small, imperfect steps. The Dodge Omni 024 Electrica 007 may have been slow, limited, and commercially doomed, but it was also brave, forward-thinking, and remarkably human. In that sense, it wasn't just a car. It was a message, a whisper from the past telling us that even the smallest spark can one day ignite a movement.